Hey, I'm Coach Mike Chase, and you're watching Average Joe's Sports Talk.
Okay, we are here at lovely Spain Park High School in Hoover, Alabama with Coach Mike Chase. Coach, for those who don't know you, talk about your early years growing up in Ohio.
Grew up playing 3 sports. Ran track and played basketball and played football. Football was probably my main sport. And got a Division II college football scholarship to Ashland University. Had 3 broken collarbones in 2 years. And that was kind of the end of my football career. Moved back home and attended Bowling Green State University, which was about 30 minutes from my house. And my stepdad was our head baseball coach and also a teacher in our school system. And it was a rural community, so all of the teachers, were all friends, and all the coaches that coached me were all friends of my stepdad. And so when I was done playing, everybody knew that I was going into education. And so there was a coaching opening. They asked me to come back and coach football. So while I was in college, I was coaching football. And then I started coaching basketball at 20 years old. I knew it was something that I always wanted to do. And so I just got a head start on it while I was still in undergrad. So when I got out of college at Bowling Green, I had already been coaching varsity football and JV basketball for 3 years. So it was just a natural transition. When I got my first job, I was already pretty experienced at coaching at a young age.
In those early years, who was a coach or someone that stuck out to you that you really looked up to that maybe kind of helped mold you into becoming a coach?
It's my high school coach, Bruce Smith. His first year of being a varsity coach was my senior year, and I wasn't going to play basketball. I loved basketball, and I really had aspired to play college football. And when I broke my collarbone twice my senior year, I had some Division I opportunities. I really thought I was going to get a scholarship offer to the University of Toledo, which was right down the street. It's where I really wanted to go. I broke my collarbone the first game of my senior year. I came back and I played 3 games, and then I broke it a second time, the 9th game of my senior year. And I pretty much thought that my college football career was over at that time. That no Division I's were going to give me a full offer at that time. But my coach sent some tape out, and I got some money to go play Division II, and I went, played a year, and then the beginning of 2-a-days my sophomore year, I broke my collarbone a 3rd time. And that was basically when the doctor told me, you're not going to be playing football anymore. So with that being said, I went back and I started coaching, and let me backtrack. I'm sorry. So I wasn't going to play basketball my senior year. Coach Smith came in, and he was somebody that I just was dying to play for, and then I had the opportunity to go back and coach with him, like I told you before. And everything I think I do relative to coaching is things that I learned playing for him and then coaching with him.
And I seen an article before how you kind of led into women's basketball. Was an AD offered you a women's job?
Yeah.
And then you just kind of said, well, if that's what was offered, then
I'd moved to Florida. I was 26, and I moved to Florida, and I was actually working some basketball camps with a guy, and he lived in Bradenton, Florida, and he was like, you need to come down here and just hang out with me for a while. So I went down and I hung out with him. Like I said, I was 26. I went down and spent a couple days with him, and I went out on the golf course with a friend of his who was a principal at Palmetto High School. We played 18 rounds of golf. We might have drank a few beers. And by the time we got done, I was his new science teacher. And so I went there, and I was going to coach football, coach JV boys basketball, and all that stuff. And what happened was the girls' coach, right when school started, got an opportunity to go be an assistant on a college staff. You know, it's hard to find coaches once the school year starts because everybody's under contract and working. And so they interviewed a couple people, a couple retired people and those kind of things, and nobody really fit what they wanted. The AD, who was our football coach, really liked me. He came to my room and he said, you know, would you like to be the girls basketball coach? Now, granted, they had won the 4A state championship the year before and had four starters coming back. So it was a big time job.
Yeah.
Probably not one that I was ready for at 26, but I took it and, you know, and fell in love with coaching girls from that point on.
In your words, what is the biggest difference, not from a physical standpoint, but a psychological standpoint, in coaching men's basketball to women's?
Yeah, and I help Coach Latch coach our boys. And my son, he's an 8th grader, and I've coached him and all of the guys around his class a year or two older and stuff. So I do have a lot of experience coaching boys, and I coach football too. The one thing I love about coaching girls is the camaraderie that they have, kind of like what Camille and I'm sure Sarah Ashley will allude to. It can go both ways. When girls get along and bond, man, they're like family. They're like sisters, and they'll fight and die for each other and all that stuff. Now, on the other hand, it can go the other way. If girls don't like each other, then you know you could spend your entire season trying to mend fences and broken hearts and all of that stuff. But I feel like I've always, for the most part, been able to make that connection with coaching girls, and I feel like they would, you know, run through a brick wall for me. They would, you know, do just about anything for me and for each other, and I really, really, really like that aspect of it.
Over, I'd say, the last especially 10 years, women's basketball has grown tremendously. What would you contribute the main factor to that being?
You know, I think I think all female sports, you know, has had a dramatic increase. You know, you're starting to see the Serena Williams and the Coco Gauffs, and you know, and just women performing, you know, on a stage equal to, you know, men. And, you know, so I think that you have a lot of girls that are growing up, and they see, you know, the exposure, they see, you know, the NCAA Women's Final Four and all of the Olympics and all the different things. And so it's a dream that's a lot more attainable. And so with that being said, you know, they're finding avenues to want to do that. I think there was a huge stereotype maybe 15 or 20 years ago that, you know, girls that played sports were tomboys and jocks and all that stuff. And I think what you're really seeing now is, you know, these girls can, you know, put on a dress and be pretty and go to the dance, and then they can go and score 25 on the basketball court without even thinking about it.
In your words, give me a definition of a great basketball player. Like when you're evaluating talent, what's the number one thing that comes to your mind, and what's something that you have to have from them if they're going to play on your team?
Yeah, coachability. You know, if they're not willing to want to learn and be better, I know that sounds funny, but you would be amazed that, you know, I've coached kids that, you know, they want to do things their way. They, you know, resist change. They don't want to have to face the things that they're not good at. And, you know, and those types of kids you can't, to me, those are the kids that I don't want to have in my program.
Just don't need that
No,
canceristic.
Well,
attitude
it's not just that. It's in order for me to be successful, just like what we were talking about before, I don't have any eligibility left. I'm reserved to an 18-foot box on the sideline, and that's what I'm allowed to do. But I can tell you that Sarah Ashley, Camille, and all the kids on my team, they can't go out and play against Hoover or Hazel Green or Ramsey or those guys without me. So, they need me and I need them in order for us to be successful. If they're not, willing to allow me to help them, then they're not going to be good and we're not going to be good. So what's the use even having them there?
Speaking of good, who is the best basketball player you've ever coached against? Someone that no matter what you did, you just like, we can't stop this girl.
Oh my gosh, 24 years of coaching basketball. Some of the best basketball players. More recent, Ebony Williams, who was at Hoover a couple years ago. She's now at University of Tennessee, Chattanooga. Was a nightmare for us. Asia Wayne, who was at Homewood and then went to Ramsey. She was a nightmare to coach and play against. Those are the two that are most recent. There's been a lot. The 10 years I was at Clay Chalkville, we played against some Ramsey teams and some midfield teams that had kids that went to LSU and went to Georgia and went to a lot of these different places. And but I can tell you one thing: I certainly wouldn't want to coach against Sarah Ashley Barker because she's the best player that I've ever seen play high school basketball.
I got you. Who is a coach that you truly admire? Someone, when you go up against them, you have to bring your A game, and maybe it's somebody you didn't expect, and then when you went home to break down film, I've heard a lot of coaches that we've interviewed talk about, when I went back and watched the film, I was blown away. Stuff I wasn't even seeing during the game.
Mm-hmm. The number one person that comes to mind is Tim Miller at Hazel Green. I started playing against him when he was at Jeff Davis, and he's from the Montgomery area. And we played against him when I was at Clay Chalkville. Then he went to Bob Jones, won a bunch of state championships there, and I was at Clay Chalkville when we played him in a state championship game in 2008. And then we've played him every year that he's been at Hazel Green. He is a guy that, his teams are gonna play. He's gonna get every ounce out of every kid, and he's gonna run stuff. He's gonna adjust to your adjustments. We've had some epic games with him. For some reason, he always comes out about two to 3 points ahead of us. I really, really, really respect. He's a really good friend of mine, and I talked to him this morning. He called me this morning actually. And we're not even in the same classification, thank goodness. He's by far, I think, one of the best coaches I've ever had to coach against.
You've built a program here at Spain Park. You guys are very consistent year in and year out. What do you think the main ingredients it is in the early days to get that where it's at now, and to kind of maintain what you got going on now?
Yeah. I've had an opportunity to build like 2 programs from scratch. So when I got to Clay, I think they had won 5 games the year before I got there, and it was not a good basketball situation. So the first thing is you just you go in and you try to give them every opportunity that they can to work. So every opportunity that you can have open gym. I'm a big strength and conditioning person. So can we get 3 or 4 more wins by being in better shape? Can we get 3 or 4 more wins by being a little bit stronger at every position? you know, try to get my kids to play AAU, try to get my kids to, you know, get a basketball in their hands every single solitary moment. The next thing that you have to do is you have to get with your youth. So, you know, I dove right into my middle school and I dove right into my youth program. I tried to make sure that I knew every kid that played basketball from third grade or younger on up. And so, you know, I used to ref the rec leagues out at Clay. I used to watch every single one of those kids play. I used to do coaching clinics for all the rec coaches that were out there, and just build those relationships. You know, usually the kids, the dads or the moms that were coaching the rec teams, they probably had the best kid on the team. So if I built a relationship with them, you know, I was probably going to get that kid to continue to play basketball. You know, there's even back 10, 12, 15 years ago, you know, when you're trying to, you know, like kind of with Sarah Ashley, when Sarah Ashley was in 6th grade, and that's when I first kind of met her and found out about her. You know, she was a softball player, a volleyball player, and a basketball player, and basketball was probably third, maybe second, but softball was probably number one on her list as far as, you know, her experience and what she was good at. And, you know, and so right then and there, as soon as I met her, my goal was, how can I make basketball more of a priority? And, you know, you talked to Camille a little bit about being a multi-sport athlete. You know, I would, you know, it's really, really difficult for kids to play an elite level at a skill-related sport, and then play other sports. It's just tough. It's part of it is, you know, because when, like for example, when we play Hoover, every one of Hoover's kids, with the exception of maybe one or so, they're a year-round basketball player. And, you know, when we play Tim Miller at Hazel Green, when we play the kids at Ramsey, when we play those guys, most of those kids are year-round basketball players. So, you know, Sarah Ashley played, you know, Camille plays for me, and I coach a high-level AAU team as well. You know, they're going to play 40 to 45 extra basketball games all across the country against the best players in the, you know, in the nation. And so when they come back, you know, they're going to be better. You know, there's just, you know, and if they're you know, spending 3 or 4 months playing volleyball, or spending 3 or 4 months playing football, or spending 5 months playing softball or whatever, it's going to be very difficult for them to compete, you know, with kids that are doing it year round.
Gotcha.
You know.
Now you won the state title here in 2017, 2018 year. Talk about that team and what was so special about that group of girls that ultimately went all the way and cut down the nets in Birmingham.
We had a young team the year before. We had most of our kids. Sarah Ashley was a freshman, and we had 2 kids, Bailey Bowers and Ariel Parks, who were juniors or sophomores, and then we had Claire Holt, Barrett Herring, Kristen Rushing that were juniors. So the core of that team in 16-17, we had 3 out of our 4, the 2 final games and the 2 regional final games. 3 of those 4 games we came from behind, and 3 of those 4 were overtime games. We lost to Hoover in overtime that year, and I think as soon as we got in the locker room after that season was over, all they could talk about was just what are we going to do to get back and win that thing. And it was the driving force. I don't think we went in the weight room. I don't think we went out on the track. I don't think we played a game where we didn't talk about the drive to get back and win it. And that team was so so focused. You know, I mean, you still have to have some balls bounce the right way and all that stuff. But it was a very, very close-knit, very, very driven basketball team.
Now, I keep getting that word, family type atmosphere here, especially from this year's team. You guys are very successful and definitely a threat to win it all. Again, what is it about this team that sticks out to you?
We have 6 players out of our 11 that can't drive. So we have 3 sophomores and 3 freshmen, and they are significant players. So three of our freshmen, one of them starts, and then the other 2 play a lot of minutes. 2 of my 3 sophomores are starters, and then we have 1 junior that starts, and then we have 1 senior that starts. Sarah Ashley went from being a great player when she was a freshman and sophomore, but she had really, really strong leadership in the classes above her, and now she learned from them what it takes to get to the Final Four, to win a state championship, and now she's been able to deliver that to all these young guys. And just like what Camille said in her interview, these guys would do anything for each other, but more so they would do anything for her. They know that this is her senior year. They know that obviously she's going to Georgia and she's going to play, another 4 years, and then she's going to go play in the WNBA after that. But they want her to go out on top. They want her to, be the Gatorade Player of the Year, be Miss Basketball, be the 7A Player of the Year, and then have that team state championship. And so they're willing to do whatever it takes to get her there. And then but the thing was she did that when she was a freshman or sophomore. And then what's going to happen is our next year's senior group is going to look down, and the guys that are younger than them are going to say, we don't want to disappoint them. And so once you kind of get that cycle going, we talked a little bit about Bucky McMillan. You think that, the group that's playing right now wants to be the group that lets the group of seniors down after they've won state championship after state championship. Those young guys don't want to disappoint those older guys, and that's when you get guys that really buy into each other.
Absolutely. Being able to coach your daughter, how special has that been for you?
I remember when she was born, and I just thought, how fast can I get her playing a sport? And she couldn't.
Said at age 3, correct?
She couldn't tell you how old she was, because I'm sure most kids don't remember.
Yeah.
But I remember we played. I signed her up to play soccer in Trustful. It was a U4 team. She was supposed to be 4 before September 1st. Her birthday, September 19th. We got signed up and we went over, and they told us that she was too young. And I'd already bought her cleats, and I'd already bought her a ball, and I'd already bought her some shin guards. And so I think she was mad. I know I was really mad. And so I called every soccer association in a 50-mile radius of my house, and Gardendale said, yeah, we'll let her play.
Awesome.
So we drove to Gardendale and played U4 soccer. And I've been coaching her pretty much in every, like I said, flag football. She's played AAU basketball since she's been in 4th grade. I've coached her team. Even when she was down at the middle school, we practice in the mornings, and I go down and I practice and coach my middle school teams in the afternoon. So I coached most of her middle school games, just like I did Sarah Ashley. When Sarah Ashley was in 7th grade, if they played 20 games, I probably coached 14 or 15 of those games down there.
when I'm hearing you say all this, it's like, it's something I love to ask coaches as well. It's like, how do you maintain a work-life balance? 'Cause you seem like a very busy man.
No, I
But
mean,
it helps with your daughter being involved too.
here's a I'm not going to tell you who said this, but this was a conversation that I had. I was saying that I say I gotta wake up and go to school, and somebody said, well, don't you mean you wake up and go to work? And I'm like, no, I'm going to school. Like, I don't consider my job work. Now, I've worked some jobs.
Yeah.
You know, I grew up pretty poor, and I worked in a factory when I was in high school, making industrial power pools that farmers would use. I worked for a landscaper, and I worked for a contractor and did carpentry work and all that stuff. So I've worked a job. I don't feel like I've ever worked a day in my life that I've been here. And so, just like what Camille said, I get to bring my kids to school. I get to see them every day. I take them home every day. To me, I just feel like this is just part of my life. I love, hey, we're going out, we're going to go scout a game. We're going to drive over to Hoover. We're going to, go get some Chipotle. We're going to, whatever. I can't think of anything else that I'd rather do.
I know something that you do that's pretty incredible. The ultra marathons. You've ran 6 of those 100-mile marathons. What got you into that? And did anybody ever come up to you and want to lock you into a straitjacket?
Yeah.
When you talk about doing one of those.
Yeah. Most people think I'm crazy.
I had a friend that ran 60 miles, like the 100K, and he said he was hallucinating towards the end.
Yeah, I've been on that. I've been in that mode. So
No big deal.
Basically, when I got out of college, I started running just to try to stay in shape. Never had any desire to do anything probably more than a 10K. I went to a marathon, and I'd never been to the finish of a marathon. It was the Nashville Marathon, and when I was at the marathon, I was sitting there, and there was probably 10,000 people running the marathon. And I'm standing there and I'm watching people come across the finish line of a 26.2 mile race. And it was hot that day. And I was watching, I'm not trying to disparage anybody, but I saw old, not what I would consider marathon shape bodies, just different genders, everything coming across that line. And I've always considered myself pretty athletic and all that stuff. And as I looked there, and I thought, wow, those guys are finishing the marathon. I want to try this. So I signed up and I ran a half marathon and trained and ran a half marathon, and then I started running road marathons. And I was pretty content at doing that. A buddy of mine that I kind of got running marathons, he started running trail, and then he tried to get me to come out and run on the trails. I was not interested. I went out with him. I was like, that's all right. And then how does anybody ever do anything crazy? A bet.
I triple dog dare you.
So my kids and his kid was playing we were playing a 3-on-3 soccer. We were in Decatur, Alabama. We were at the hotel bar, having some cold ones, and he was talking about this 100-mile race, the Pinhoti 100, that's in Alabama, and it was in a couple months. And I was just joking. I said, "Yeah, I think I'm gonna run that Pinhoti." And his wife, who was also an ultra runner, she was like, "Mike Chase, you don't have enough time to train for that." She's like, "You can't do it. You'll kill yourself." And I went, okay. And I signed up the next day and I trained and I ran it and I almost probably died.
So you completed the first one?
I did.
Wow.
It was very, very difficult. But I got the bug. And so I ended up signing up for the granddaddy of all the races is called the Western States 100, which is out in Nevada, California. It was the actual race that started the 100-mile trail races. They have a lottery that you have to get into, and the Pinhoti was a 100-mile qualifier. And so my buddy was like, well, you finished Pinhoti, he's like, you got to put a ticket in for Western States. And I was like, okay. So I put the ticket in, and they have a graduated lottery system, and they pick from people that try to get in this race from all over the world. I had like a 3% chance of getting picked.
Oh, wow.
And I got picked.
I knew it.
I got
knew
picked.
it.
So I ended up going out that July, and
This one you have to take very seriously.
no, this one is up over 12,000 feet.
Wow.
We started at 6,000, went up to about 12, and ran a good majority of it
Oh my goodness.
at probably the 8 to 10,000 feet mark.
So oxygen's less, you're in an incline.
It was in July. It was 107, and you were above the tree line, so there were no trees, so you were completely exposed.
How in the world, I'm sure you cramped.
No, not too bad. It wasn't. It was just. It was the terrain was what I was.
Wow.
It was very difficult, but I finished. I finished. So I've started 6. They all have time limits, and I've completed all 6 of them under the time limit.
Is that your number one hobby away from basketball, or is there something else?
I don't know if I call it a hobby. I like the one thing that you don't get, that I always thought, that you could get from coaching was I like to compete, and I always thought, well, I can fulfill my competitive desire through these guys, but it's not enough. For me, it's not enough. Like, because I don't get the physical part of it. Like, I definitely get the mental part of, watching these guys, preparing these guys to battle against Hoover and battle against the officials and battle against, whatever. But I don't get the training. I don't get the having to persevere and overcome. And for me, I need that. So,
The competitive part,
not
or
just the
competing with yourself?
just persevering through things that that are difficult.
Makes sense. Back to your coaching career. What is the most satisfying thing you find in coaching basketball? When this happens, you feel like, okay, my job's complete in this, whatever that is.
Yeah, I would say just a couple things. Like knowing that I was a part of Sarah Ashley Barker, Barrett Herring, Claire Holt, Sheila James, kids that have gone on and, colleges, Georgia's probably $40,000 a year. She's going to go play in the SEC, play on TV. She's not going to pay for a thing. She's going to travel all over the Southwest and even out of the country, and she's not going to have to pay a dime, and so I was a part of helping her get to that point. The other aspect that I think is really gratifying is I get stuff on Facebook and Instagram and all this stuff. Every time something basketball comes up, like this time of year, I'll post something about basketball. And a bunch of my former players that are 35 years old, have 2 kids, been married, have been working, and all that stuff. And they always reach out back to me, and they always show how important their time as a basketball player in my program meant to them and what it does for them in their daily lives. And so, just like what I said about Coach Smith, like that man has shaped my whole life and all the things that I've done. And so, as a teacher and a coach, I mean, I think that's why we do it.
I actually want to close on that note. If you could put into words, what would those words be of what you would want a girl to take away from your program when she parts ways with you and goes off into, some's going to go play college basketball, some's probably going to go just to college, and then some may not even go to college. They may go to work. What would the number one takeaway or takeaways be in your words that you would want them to remember the days spent with you here?
The first thing is I think there's a quote. You can't always get. How's it go? You can't always succeed if you only work on the days when you feel good. And I try not to overburden these guys with quotes and all that stuff, but sometimes you get a little long-winded. And I try to tell them, like, when you come in and you're not focused, when you come in and you don't feel like you want to practice, and you don't, these girls depend on you. Eventually there's going to be a day when you're going to own a business, you're going to be a mother, you're going to be a wife, where real people, real life situations are going to depend on you. And if you learn how to persevere right now, when realistically it doesn't matter. If Sarah Ashley comes in and she doesn't bring her A game to practice, it's not going to be a life or death situation. We ain't going to have a good practice, but it ain't going to be a life or death situation. But if she's got 2 kids at home that's got the flu, and she's got to work 40 or 50 hours, and and she's got to take care of the house, and she's got to do all these things, there are no I can have a bad day, and so that's what I know, that sports is a microcosm of life, and I want them to take away the you gotta bring it, you gotta work when you don't want to work, you've got to be disciplined, you got to be respectful, you got to buy in, you got to do all of those things if you want to be successful in being a district attorney, or I know SA wants to be a coach one day. I can't wait the day for when SA is a coach, because all of the people who have played for me, who are now coaches, now they understand what I'm talking about. When they're trying to,
look at the joy on his
when
face.
they're trying to bargain with their players, and their players roll their eyes or they look back at them, I'm like, now you know what I'm talking about.
That makes a lot of sense. Coach, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm sure there's a lot of coaches going to see this and have takeaways from it. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, appreciate it.